entitled Heroin and Helicopters. Would you please welcome Citizen Cope? As I fall into my chair. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for the lovely clapping.
And you haven't really done anything yet. How about that?
Exactly.
So as I mentioned in the open, first album in 7 years.
Yeah, it was just time. I think a lot of times you have to be inspired to make music, and making an album sometimes is different than just writing a song.
Yeah.
I've been writing the whole time, but it was just, you get into it deep, and sometimes I feel, they say it's not rocket science, but I'm starting to question that theory.
Was there a moment or an an incident or a situation or something that happened that said, okay, now is the time to make a record?
No, I didn't really feel like that. I think that it was, I never try to push doing something, and it's just the moment had to come, and it had to be pure, because I feel like if I've done one thing is never really put out a song that I didn't believe in. So it wasn't. I try not to put any filler songs on an album.
Is there? You said you were writing the whole time. Did the break give you kind of a better perspective on songwriting?
Not really. I think I was just also doing a lot of shows. My daughter came about 8 years ago. Yeah. And so in between that, writing and making a record can be very, very intense. So I'd also moved to California in that time, and so there was just some lax as far as, and also a little bit of, putting out music and not feeling, well, is anyone gonna care?
Yeah. Is anyone listening?
When I make records, it's just something that comes from the heart. So it just had to, I had to fill that up again, and I never expected to be a performer. I always got into this to write songs and to record and to produce records. That was my love. And then everyone was like, well, you gotta go play live. And then
was that something you had to kind of learn?
Yeah, I deal with stage fright, but I had a really bad case of it, and I never thought I would be. I remember saying to myself, what the fuck have I gotten myself into? With this, because I never would have been, I just got on stage and I felt like, the flowers started blossoming and the sun, the sun came through the clouds, and I found like I'd found my calling. Quite opposite. I felt like I wanted to go hide somewhere. And but I remember moments of like looking at myself in the mirror and saying, what the hell did you do? Because it was just, it was bad. And I think playing it's good because you got to face your fears in life. So it was a good thing to be able to go there and get over the majority of that and kind of search from what that was about.
Yeah. I know that it's a great title, the album Heroin and Helicopters, and I know that comes from a conversation that you had with Carlos Santana. Would you tell that story?
Yeah. So I'm playing the Fillmore in San Francisco, and Carlos Santana comes backstage, and he was wanting to use my song Sideways for his record, and I'd already recorded it for mine. But it turned out his record came out first, and it was, the follow-up to a huge Grammy-winning album. And so, okay.
There we go. Silence.
So he said, after we talked a little bit, and he saw the show, and he said, whatever you do, just watch out for the two H's. I'm like, what are the two
Two
H's?
H's.
And he's like, Heroin and Helicopters. And that they don't work well with musicians. And
Think about that just for a second.
so Bill Graham and Stevie Ray
Right,
Vaughan
Stevie
had
Ray
passed
Vaughan.
away
Yeah.
in the helicopter, and we all know about the other one. But it kind of made sense to me now as well as it did then, not just on a perspective of kind of what he was saying, but I found it somewhat prolific that it even made more sense today with all the addiction going on, not just with substance abuse, but with our addiction to confrontation and our addiction to our cell phone devices.
Yeah.
Ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding.
Well, I mean, you have talked about that. It deals with a lot more than just the obvious sort of opioid crisis.
Right.
That there are all kinds of obsessions and addictions that we have in our society.
Yeah, and also just like the helicopter's kind of a sign of extravagance and getting somewhere fast without having to have to do the work to get there, and it's also very dangerous. So it kind of made me think about just our society as trying to make something that's not built to last, and the shortcuts we take sometimes to get somewhere, and so that was kind of an interesting thing. And then when I put it up, I was like, people are gonna think I'm on heroin or something, or I used to do heroin, but that's why I had to clarify what the name was.
Yeah. It's a great. Personally, I love the title. You basically, if I understand correctly, you basically had this album done, or a lot of it done, and then you went to Jamaica.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened in Jamaica?
I always used to go to Jamaica to write. So I would go there and write and do a little running on the beach, smoke a little spliff, drink a little coffee in the morning, and then kind of have a little workout session, and then just the day would be kind of dedicated to just spending a lot of time alone, because that's where I got a lot of the songs originally. It's just spending a lot of time by myself and in solitude, doing, kind of learning that craft and letting it come to me as far as what the muse was about, and I knew there was something, but it never finally clicked. Kind of spending a lot of time with the guitar and singing and learning. So I hadn't done that in a while, and I came back and listened to the record, and then some new songs came, and also just and I recorded some of those things when I came back, and also just sonically I wasn't happy with where the record was, because one of the goals was to make it kind of a really great sonic experience also, and I've always spent a lot of time with that, making the record sound good. Even though it takes time, it takes a little more time to get the record to sound good. It's just like I say, it's rocket science. It's rocket science.
Well, particularly about the sonics, because this record, as you said, sonically, it sounds great, but it's not, it's not overdone. A lot of it, the instrumentation is actually fairly simple.
I mean, all of my stuff is simple. I think some of the best producers are able to, the people that I really admire, from Willie Mitchell, who did a lot of the Al Green stuff, to George Martin, who did the Beatles stuff, to Dr. Dre, leave space, and there's places to breathe, and and then I've gone through like the Phil Spector kind of like wall of sound thing with Every Waking Moment, and there's always been, I always liked records like even the old 70s records with Neil Young did. You could hear where the snare hits, you can hear where the guitar goes, and those are things that are overlooked a lot of times, and we just see them as something that is supposed to happen, but there's a lot of thought put into that by whoever made those records.
Well, and as you were saying, you're kind of feeling or finding that it is actually rocket science. Is it hard for you? And I know this, occasionally artists are challenged by this, to know when a track is done, when you're finished with something.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of the battles you have, because a lot of times you want to be finished with it. It's not like, you're say, I'm just going to go indulge myself in this snare drum. But
you could. I mean, you can get lost in that.
Yeah, and then you can also get in a situation where you just, okay, it's done, but then you don't want to ask the real questions sometimes. And I've had records where I cut in a day and mixed in a day, and they've been great. But it's sometimes like the song of Clarence Greenwood recordings, Pablo Picasso. And it leads into My Way Home, which is kind of like one piece. So they're like two different songs, and I had to mix that song like 4 times. It's like the best one was the one I was doing in the studio without the mix engineers, and then finally the 4th time, I'm with the guys the whole time, but I come home and I feel the goosebumps, and it's like, okay, it's done. So that's you kind of get an idea when it's done.
Is it the kind of thing where you have to live with a track for a while, and maybe even kind of take it out a little bit and see how it sounds in the world, as opposed to just living with it in the studio?
Yeah, you have. Playing for people is always good. Listening to on different speakers. I have this Bose speaker system I call it the Truth Box.
The Truth Box.
Yeah,
I love that.
And it's got a little teeny like subwoofer on it. So, and I didn't use it on this record, but the last record I used it on, the engineer said it was not the Truth Box.
The anti-Truth Box. Sonically, how is this record different? How have you progressed in 7 years in terms of your thoughts about the way your music should sound?
Well, I've always had this same idea. I wanted like songwriting stuff that were actually real songs with heart and emotion, to also have a rhythm and an impact rhythmically from a lot of the stuff that I loved with hip hop. But pollinizing different sounds and stuff like that is really difficult. I think a lot of people just, okay, let me put a hip hop beat and some heavy guitar drums, and they don't realize the element of what hip hop, the genesis of it was emotion and point of view, and also the old R&B records that I loved,
which were
it started out, I guess, with Sam Cooke, and then Otis Redding and Willie Mitchell and Al Green stuff, and so that the musical instrumentation of that stuff combined with the melodies and everything, and then the songwriting. I was really big into John Lennon and Randy Newman as songwriters, and of course I went through my Neil Young thing and loved I just loved really good records, and like actual songs that. So I knew I'd play records hundreds of times. So I was like, okay. Friends would be like, yeah, you already played it once. And I was like, that's going to keep going on.
Did you produce this record? Are you the producer on this record?
I'm the producer, yeah. I worked with a gentleman from D.C. Who did a lot of the drum programming, and I normally do all my drum programming.
Yeah.
But on the songs that we use drum machines on, there was most of it is a live drummer, but I like to make my drums sound pretty big. So Chris produced the song War and a couple other things he worked on.
The reason I ask is, oftentimes producers end up being sort of the feedback loop for the artist, in terms of, kind of holding it up and saying, this what you want to sound like, or constructive kind of feedback on any particular track. So I'm wondering, who do you go to when you want some feedback?
Well, I think this was good because the engineers are always usually pretty close to the project, and I usually keep consistent an engineer, and if it's not the same person, it's somebody that I trust musically. And Chris was there, XC was there, and this guy Science, who was a friend and a producer. They'll be around, and the people that you bounce things off of. But I think deep down, if something's not there yet.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you don't think it's there, and you listen to it, and it's there.
Yeah. I imagine at some point it's about trusting your gut. Especially if you've done this for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things, and I think you've talked about this a little bit in terms of fighting expectations around your music and around your songwriting. In that, people occasionally will read into things that you write. Let's say like bullet and a target. They'll read into kind of what they'll assume they know what you're talking about. And I'm wondering if you're expecting sort of the same reaction to songs on this record, like Justice or War.
Well, I don't think that's an interesting thing about the songs. I think the songs are supposed to be meant for whatever that person hears them as. And there's going to be moments of that you're aligned with what it is, but I couldn't say when people, what is this about? That's kind of a question you think about afterwards. When you write a song, it's just there's something that happens that is not something that you're like sitting there planning. There's a magic, something element in the universe that happens, and luckily it just goes through you, and then. But there's moments that, okay, this, you read back, okay, this is about this, or this is this word, or so people will see what, feel what it think what it's about.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people that were in the war were in the bullet and the target, and I've gotten guys with PTSD and it said that they would play that before this, and they would go out on something. And I went to Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C., and visited a guy who lost his leg. His wife had written me, and had come to a show with one leg, and I'm playing, played some songs for him and his friends, and I was like, what do you guys want to hear? And he's like, Bullet and Target. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't think they really got what the song was about. And but to them it was this, and there's people, Pablo Picasso, what's that about? And it's just like, well, it's about what you really want it to be
It's
about.
how you receive it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And War, like off the new record, people will be like, oh, this is an anti-war song, when it's really, if I really look deeply into it, which I don't like doing my songs, but it's really about kind of the war that we have within us. And within our mind, and and it talks about what's going on currently, and those kind of obsessions, if you will, compulsions to think too much, can be a pretty deadly thing for yourself.
You've actually said that you really don't write songs about anything.
I don't think I said that. I just can't really take it's not something I say. I don't go in there and say this is about it's based on the Odyssey and Ulysses S. Grant's battle of Gettysburg. It's not that thought out in the sense that there are emotions, and it's always like the characters in my stories. They're part me. So, and then there are also people I know, and it's situations I've had and emotions I've felt. So that part of it, I would say, is, you know, very real. But like to come out there and premeditate what a song is about, I don't think I've done. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit here and write about 9/11 today. You know, I just never did it like that.
For you, do songs start with a groove, or you know, kind of a lyrical idea or a fragment or something?
I usually start with the guitar and just write with it, and then the melody will come, and then the lyrics. And I've written a few things very rarely where I just wrote something in poetry and then added it to the music. Sometimes I'll start with a drum machine. Sometimes I'll start with the keyboards, like on Let the Drummer Kick. I did that record. I had all the music, and I did it in my house or my apartment at the time, and then it was, I didn't have the verses, and I couldn't think of the verses, and I'd just written some poetry, and I was like, well, I guess I'll put the verses, because the record company guy was like, you gotta finish that song. And he gave me shit the whole time, and like, and then it was my first record, and I recently saw him, and I said, hey, thank you for getting me to finish that song.
And now you're your own record company.
Yes.
You're releasing stuff on your own.
Yes.
Yeah. How was that different for you?
Well, I get to argue with myself.
Well, you certainly don't have record company guys telling you to finish a song.
Oh yeah, part of me is the record company guy. But creatively, I always had kind of a carte blanche, luckily, because I came in doing records where I wrote all the stuff and produced it. So it wasn't ever a thing of, hey, what writers are you going to use, or what producers are you going to use, and kind of where I came from, I guess, aesthetically and musically, it was something that, luckily, the people I were around, or the people that made the decisions, never really challenged me on that much.
Yeah.
And because I couldn't imagine like writing a Cope record where somebody else would have co-wrote it, or I just never understood that. Sit in a room, meet somebody, hey, how you doing? Let's write a song together. I think it's more of something where you spend a lot of time, and it's or somebody comes and gives you a piece and says, hey, can you write something to that? You know, that would make more sense to me. But I was lucky. I always had creative, you know, control. And then I was, it was very, the whole marketing promotion thing. And I realized that somebody else owned all your stuff forever. And a record company or a contract, it says in perpetuity throughout the world. I mean, no, throughout the universe. So I'm thinking they must know something that I don't know. Like, this alien shit must be really true. Because they're already thinking about selling this stuff to the aliens one day.
Area 51 recordings.
Yeah, they got it. They're like, we're not just doing the world, we're doing the universe. And so the more and more that happened, you felt, and I really had blessed relationships with the people that I actually, you know, signed my contracts with, and everything was good. There was a few like marketing promotion things where it was just difficult to put me in pigeonhole me and everything and put me in a genre. But as far as the people I dealt with were always really good and really supportive and very, you know, challenging if they had to be. And so that was never my problem, but then those companies would be, all those people would leave, or that company, like...
Very transient.
Yeah, like DreamWorks, who I signed with first, ended up closing their doors, and then I signed with Arista, and they closed their doors. I ended up on RCA, a company I would not have normally signed with. And then they kind of took the record once it was already done. So they didn't have skin in the game, really.
Yeah.
They kind of just picked it up from Arista, and all the artwork was done, and it was like, okay, great, we got a cool record. We got,
Yeah, something to work on.
Yeah.
So listening to this record in particular, it very much it's very much a Cope record in that there's a lot of styles and genres represented in the record, which makes me want to go back with you a little bit and talk about you grew up in West Texas, moved to DC. Who were the first artists or bands that you heard growing up that caught your ear?
It was probably, I date myself, but my real father had at the time, had a 8-track, and
Love that.
he played Otis Redding records in it, and we listened to the radio a lot, and my mother had a lot of LPs, so it would be like all the classics that were already past me, like the Stones, the Beatles, Fleetwood Mac, Dolly Parton, and then in the Texas side, we listened to a lot of Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and whatever was currently happening.
Yeah.
So when I moved to DC, there's a music called go-go music, which is they'll play for 3 hours straight without stopping. So one song goes into the next, so it's a continuous beat. And everyone's like, well, why does the beat doesn't ever stop? And it all sounds the same, but if you really know it, it doesn't sound the same. And you learn to really love it. And then hip-hop came, and I really enjoyed that aspect of like hearing kind of a voice that had a perspective and spoke. It wasn't just about writing a love song or something like that. It was actually the barometers of what you could write a song about seemed to expand somehow when that genre came. And then also hip-hop, listening to all the samples, when you would always try to find where those samples were from and get turned on by that music.
Right.
So that was something that was beautiful about the early hip-hop, because you could go and find the original Parliament Funkadelic record, or the original Bar-Kays record, or the original Al Green record that
A real
was
avenue
used.
for discovery.
Yeah, so it wasn't just, and people would really do things that you hadn't heard before, or you knew you'd heard somewhere, but then it was, okay, now you had a new respect for that record.
You mentioned go-go music, and I have to talk to you briefly about Chuck Brown, who's the founder, I suppose,
The godfather.
the godfather of go-go.
Go-go.
You got to know him, and you actually, I think, gave him your first demo.
I gave Chuck my first demo. He was playing at a club, and I'd seen him a couple times, but he had this run where he played with the P-Funk horns, and it was a club called the Kilimanjaro Club in D.C., and it was just one of the biggest and best musical experiences I'd had, and I started making demos, and I went backstage and gave him my demo, and lo and behold, he called, a couple days later, and really liked the demo, and passed it on to some management people, who I ended up not doing a deal with, but it was just like the first steps of learning, and he was always supportive. Every time he'd see me in the house, he'd call me out and say, what's up? And he actually came on stage with me at the 930 Club in D.C. before he passed away, and I was going to have him sing One Lovely Day in go-go version before he passed. We had the session booked, but he got sick. So his wife had called and said, why don't you guys do that in go-go style?
Yes.
Man, that would be great.
How does his music and go-go find its way into what you do? What did you learn from him?
I think the drums, his voice is just so strong. and clear. His guitar playing to me is amazing. Um, I wish I could say I learned anything from him, but I tried to just soak everything up, everything about him, like the way he used to. You know, I gave him a. Shouldn't say this. I gave him a bag of weed one time, and he had these cowboy boots, and he put the weed inside his cowboy boots like that. I was like, that's fucking cool. And like, you know, he could do 100 push-ups. He was like 75. He would do like 100 push-ups. He had like a six-pack. Of course, I unfortunately didn't learn that from him. But I think the drums and his ability to, and I still learn from that, just his ability to make everybody feel important. Because I've always not had that type of, I've always been somewhat inward, and a lot of people are like, what's wrong with him? And I just have never, it's always, when people come up and say, oh, I love what you do, it's always been a thing of, I think somewhat anxiety maybe. I don't know. I mean, I always love the compliment, but you know, I think he's been a personable person, and he just loved people. And I think that he really, one thing I did learn from him is that you know, he would strive for peace and love. And you know, he would always say that, I got peace and love, you know. I always feel like that was something that carried on to me, is to spread that in music, be an ambassador for that in music.
Well, and you know, and that's a good segue to come back to Heroin and Helicopters, because I think, you know, listening to the record, there's a lot of defiance going on here, but defiance, you know, in the face of things that we can't necessarily control, but also defiance in that positivity and love are actually the most important.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, that's the most powerful. So it's no matter what's going on, and I might point to some things that bother me on a personal level, but on a spiritual level, that there's a higher and a stronger, you know, element out there. And, you know, the defiance that I talk about is also the struggle within. It's not, you know, I'm not meaning to point fingers at anything or any system, but to acknowledge it. And I think unless you acknowledge things that are kind of clear to me sometimes, people don't learn a lesson from it.
Yeah. So, fair warning, we're going to ask for a question or two from the house here in a minute. I'm also interested in, you know, kind of your early performances. You talked earlier about, you know, being, you know, having a little bit of, you know, stage fright or whatever. Tell me about some of your earliest performances. Were those around D.C.? Is that where you?
Yeah, there's mostly in D.C.
Yeah.
I would, if there wasn't a venue, I would find like a restaurant, bar type place that you could bring a sound system in, and, you know, and bring a little sound system. We had this guy used to charge me $150, and he'd bring a sound system in and start out that way, get the word out. You know, I was never really the type of person to say, well, I can't get a gig. You know, I'll just kind of make one, and then.
Well, sometimes that's what you got to do.
Yeah, and I got, you know, offered a couple opening slots because my demo tapes were cool, and then there's a place called the Velvet Lounge. I played a lot solo acoustically, and then Jay, who's with us tonight, we did a lot of duo shows at the Velvet Lounge and other places. Then got the band going, and, you know.
How important to you, because you've talked often about you know, the DC community, you know, and kind of coming up through the DC community. How important was it to you to have, you know, kind of, you know, a community of musicians and an audience in DC to help you grow as an artist?
Well, DC is a very transient city. There's the go-go scene, and there's the punk rock, indie rock scene, and I didn't really fit into either of those, although I had respect for both of them. So some of the go-go, I recorded at a go-go studio, for example, with the engineer that played in a go-go band and a bass player and a drummer that played on Sun's Gonna Rise, and Bull and the Target is actually in a band called Backyard, which is a DC mainstay band. I think the DC thing at the time was, it was coming off a lot of like being the murder capital and just a heavy, alone from just the city of that we look at as a government city. It had its own thing going on, its own style, its own the way to talk, everything, and predominantly there was a really, really bad drug problem, and a lot of people were getting killed because of it, and then the economy wasn't what it was, and it was dangerous. There was an air of danger in D.C. at the time, so that kind of put more into the music, whereas like then I feel like any scene was there to garner. So it was kind of, and that's always been I didn't have like a subculture of like a jam band or a reggae or any kind of thing. So it's just kind of started with all different kind of influences, and luckily people identify with the songs.
So as I said, we'll take a couple of questions here from the from the house here. Do we have a question? Yes, sir.
Do we have a microphone so I could hear it? Okay. That's
Shelby Lynn.
That's an interesting. Shelby Lynn's an artist who I really love, and I was a huge fan of the I Am Shelby Lynn record that she made, and she contacted me sometime, and she was like, somebody's like, oh, Shelby Lynn wants to write a song with you. I was like, oh, I'd love to. So I went up to Palm Springs where she was, and then I played her a couple things, and she says, well, Clarence, I just want you to sing on some stuff. I said, whatever you want, I'll sing. We don't have to write a song. We don't have to do any of that. I'll sing on your record. So she had me sing some background on her record, and, she's in the booth. Give it some of that soul.
Who else? Yes, sir.
First time we saw you was at Crossroads in Chicago for Clapton.
Yeah.
How did that come about? It was really
Well, Clapton's a fan of yours.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because he said I had some people that were involved in that festival, and they're like, oh, I played Eric your record a long time ago. He likes it. And then when I asked him, he said, well, that he'd heard it on the movie Ghost Town. He'd heard Sideways on Ghost Town. So, and I hadn't seen Ghost Town, or still haven't seen Ghost Town, but I'm forever grateful to Ghost Town for that. But my friend Scooter Weintraub, who works with Eric, had kind of and manages Gary Clark, and that was like the first time that any of us saw Gary Clark Jr. And Doyle Bramwell had brought Gary from Austin, and we hung out that night. I was like, you got to come out on tour with him. We played some shows together early on before Gary was signed. But that's how the Crossroads thing went down. Thank you. I mean, I thought that Hands of the Saints was good, but me singing alone to 35,000 people, it was kind of like a little weird.
In the back, yes, sir.
That's me. Mark was a fan of my first record, and his producer, Marshall Altman, on that record was the first person to find my first demo at Capitol Records. So it turned Mark onto the record, and I guess they were writing together, and that line came up somehow.
He's fantastic, Mark Broussard. But by the way, I've got time for one more, right here.
I knew that was coming.
I was
Do
leaning.
I have a witness?
I was leaning away from that, but as long as somebody else
I
asked
have a
it.
witness, but I said it was coming. I was making demos, so I didn't know what to call it, and I thought it would be weird just being like Clarence Greenwood and Copeland is my middle name, and Cope is short for that, so it's a nickname. And I was just like, fuck, I'd never seen Citizen Kane, but I heard it was a great movie. So I wanted to have some prestige behind it. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh shit, this is a little too close. Especially when he ended up with the woman singer. I'm like, oh God.
So, last question. The Clarence Greenwood recordings, got you a lot of attention, not only from the public, but the artist community. And we talked about Eric Clapton, being a fan, and Sheryl Crow recording, your material, Carlos Santana. And I'm wondering whether at that time you felt a certain weight of expectation after that, in terms of, oh, now I've got something I need to live up to.
Yeah, I mean, I think every single time I got in the studio, there was that. I think, unfortunately, I've always been like the sky's falling, people like.
How so?
Just when it came to that, because it was like, I used to buy and sell concert tickets to sporting events, and I'd be outside on a Tuesday night, outside the Bullets, and I'd be cold to make $50, and then sometimes I'd make a lot more, but there were those nights, and that's what I was doing for a living. So I actually enjoyed it. I liked the hand-to-hand thing and the business aspect of it, and it was fun. But that's, I was like, all right, there's something else I want to do. And then when I started doing demos, it was like it had to be good enough to get, trying to get a record deal. And I got a record deal, and I was like, I got to do something that's going to keep me in my record deal. And the first album I did with Capitol, they dropped me. So I went from scalping tickets to having a record deal with Capitol Records to scalping tickets again. and then when I made the DreamWorks record, I had big expectations, and the record, it was they spent some money on it, and I spent and so it was, and nothing happened off that record. It kind of really flopped at the time. Since then, it's done really well, but at first it was dismal, and I thought, like, If There's Love would have been a big song off that record, and I thought I had a couple, records that they could market and promote, and then so it was bad, and then the Santana thing happened. I was like, oh, great. Then I came in, I'm like, how am I going to write another record? And it's just all the same thing. So then the Clarence Greenwood record came together because I had to give them a lot of money to get out of the DreamWorks record. So I ended up producing and using the engineer at the studio and just spending a lot of time in the studio. And so that was always, I was like, how am I going to write another, you always think, how are you going to write another good song?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not like, oh, I got this now.
Yeah.
So there was that, and then Every Waking Moment. I mean, nothing ever really happened. Like, even Clarence Greenwood didn't happen. It took, it's like sold 700,000 copies now, but it took 15 years.
Yeah.
And there was no radio. There was no like New York Times spread. There was no Playboy article.
Well, we're really glad that you took the time to come down tonight.
Thank you.
It's a Heroin and Helicopters comes out March
1st.
March 1st. So that would be next Friday, a week from Friday, I guess.
A week from Friday.
Yeah. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. But more importantly, we want to hear you play and sing.
All
So,
right.
ladies and gentlemen, Citizen Cope.
All right, this is a song from the new record. It's called The River. And this is Jay Nichols.
Now, 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 we're solid in illusion. Now we're solid in illusion.
Thank you all so much for coming out. I'm not the best interview, but thank you for sitting through that. There was a couple questions that I knew would come up. Thank you. So this song is called Justice. It's also from the new record. Within me all of my life. There's so much trouble in the world, surrounded by miracles. So much hatred undeserved, but it will not work, 'cause still my love will be received. Better yet, still my heart is in need of release. Yes, still my love will be received. Better yet, still my heart is in need of release. But it ain't about justice when it's not about what was, what is. When it's not about what's left. The next step, when it ain't about justice, when it's not about what was, what is, when it's not about what's left, when it's not about the next step. Whoa. This brand new riff, looking for somebody to play it with. I found this brand new light, something within me all of my life. There's so much trouble in the world, surrounded by miracles. There's so much hatred undeserved, but it will not work, 'cause when it's not about what was, what is, when it's not about what's left, when it's not about the next step, when it ain't about justice, when it's not about what was, what is, when it's not about what's left, when it's not about the next step, when it ain't about justice. Thank you. We get a little help.
How's everybody out there feeling? Say, Mr. Dalai Lamas, my little sister shooting hair on a model, amputees in Freetown, Sierra Leone. The church wasn't honest, the state put the youth in a harness, creating hostility among us. The teacher said no college, still kid gotta get a check with a couple commas. People wanna bomb us, poor people gotta scatter and run from us. You can blame it on two sober pilot, what we're honest. What you done here is put yourself between a bullet and a target, and it won't be long before you pull yourself away. What you done here is put yourself between a bullet and a target, and it won't be long before you pull yourself away. Yeah, between a bullet and a target, between a bullet and a target. I've been knowing her for years, I've been seeing her for years. She got the dark, dark, wavy hair, with a voice that you just don't care. She got a skirt with a half to top, she got a daddy never gave. She drank a beer with a proper shot, she got knocked up in a pickup truck, but she got engaged when she was 19 to this dude who was acting insane. Had a 45 that he always came. Said one day, one too many days. Now we ducked and she ran away, never to be heard from, never to be seen. I checked the cover of a magazine, and now I'm wondering how, just wondering what you done here. Just put yourself between a bullet and a target, and it won't be long before pulling yourself away. What you done here is put yourself between a bullet and a target, and it won't be long before pulling yourself away. Yeah, yeah. Between a bullet and a target, good time. Relation, creation, incarceration, determination, equation, humiliation, reincarnation, situation, elation, identification, retaliation, education, inspiration, no substitution, solution, confusion, yeah, yeah. Let the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, 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 the drummer kid, the drummer kid, yeah, the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, let the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, the drummer, let the drummer kid, yeah, y'all. Relation, creation, incarceration, determination, equation, humiliation, reincarnation, situation, elation, identification, retaliation, education, inspiration, no substitution, non-inclusion, drug infusion, delusion, inspiration, you're my inspiration, you're my inspiration, yeah, yeah. Say you don't even have to wait. Say you don't even have to wait. Say you don't even have to wait. Let the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, the drummer, let the drummer, let the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, let the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, let the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, the drummer, let the drummer kid, yeah, y'all. Yeah. Say you don't even have to wait. Say you don't even have to wait. Say you don't even have to wait. Let the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, let the drummer kid, let the drummer kid, yeah, let the drummer kid, let the drummer, let the drummer, let the drummer kid, yeah, y'all. This is Jay Nichols. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. The woman that I love is 40 feet tall. she's a movie star. She's all in the papers and everywhere I go. People hand me quarters and they pat me on the back. They treat me like I'm famous, I never leave a side. Still they could be dangerous, and when the night arrives, the light hits her features and the cars drive by, just so they could see her, and she never bats an eye. When someone takes a picture in Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up on a stretcher, yeah, Mr. Officer. If you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up in the papers, yeah, yeah. Say if I had a pistol, I'd brandish it and wave it. She's the only one alive that knows that I'm not crazy. She's gonna testify on my behalf down at the Navy, so I could get some peace and provide for my babies. Got a stick and a bottle, I pretend I got a razor. Helicopters and cameras, they are shooting for the station. They say that a wild man defending his lady, but for some odd reason they keep calling you a pain and saying, Mr. Officer, if you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up on a stretcher, yeah, Mr. Officer. If you come to take her, then that means one of us gon' end up in the papers, yeah, yeah. Gon' end up on a stretcher, yeah, yeah, yeah. See, that means one of us gon' end up in the papers, yeah, yeah. When you're so long gone, you can't help yourself. When you're so dead wrong, let alone no one else. Where the children still dying in the street, the baby's still living with disease, and the cops got guns and poor folk got sons who work for Mr. Franklin every week. So if you come looking for hard times ain't hard to find, because we're given that lifeline only once in a lifetime. Baby, we were born, maybe we were born to be sure to endure when the storm comes. Got them sad eyes, got them cat eyes, got them angels so tired from saving his life, and I could bet to contain yourself before you end up killed. Yeah, his bare feet touching her bare feet, the air breeze sweet near the mountain's peak. And I forgot what the wise man said about that ancient dread. So if you come looking for hard times ain't hard to find, because we're given that life now only once in a lifetime. Baby, we were born, baby, we were born to be sure to endure when the storm comes. Baby, we were born, baby, we were born to rejoice, rejoice when it comes. I was at TFW, I had to call you, I had to say goodbye to my baby today. Reminding me of the days of old at Shepherd's Air Force Base. Ooh, you a star, you always are, you were so full of grace. We ain't spoken in so long, but I think about you every day. It's been a hard living, you never know when you be lifted from the gift of living. But something really hit me, but the tears burned down my face. She came to me from heaven. Right now we gotta put her on the 727, and I promised it'd be different. So it makes me alive today. Yeah. All we have is a story to pass and a memory to embrace. All of this, and I had to say goodbye to my baby today. Had to say goodbye to my baby. Had to say bye-bye to my baby. Had to say bye-bye, goodbye to my baby today. Say goodbye to my baby today. Had to say goodbye to my little baby girl today. Had to say goodbye to my baby today. I had to say goodbye to my little baby girl today. Thank you. It's huge. It's like, damn, this is a Kiss concert. I'm supposed to be a little bigger. You know it ain't easy for this out to leave me. There are no words to describe it in French or in English, 'cause diamonds say fade, flowers say bloom. And I'm telling you that these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways, they've been knocking me out late. Ever you come around me, these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways. I keep thinking in a moment that time will take them away. But these feelings won't go away. These feelings won't go away. You know it ain't easy for this heart to leave me. There are no words to describe it in French or in English, 'cause diamonds they fade, flowers they bloom. And I'm telling you that these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways, they've been knocking me out late. Whenever you come around me, these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways. I keep thinking in a moment that time will take them away. But these feelings won't go away. These feelings won't go away. 'Cause diamonds stay fade, and flowers stay bloom. And I'm telling you, and I'm telling you that diamonds stay fade, and flowers stay bloom. And I'm telling you, and I'm telling you that these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways, they've been knocking me out late. Ever you come around me, these feelings won't go away. They've been knocking me sideways. I keep thinking in a moment that time will take them away. But these feelings won't go away. These feelings won't go away. Thank you so much, y'all. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right.